This episode may contain stories of domestic violence. Please be advised. Welcome to the Sage Advice Podcast, where each week we sit down with people just like you who have left abusive relationships and found healing. Don't forget to check out our website, sage.community, because together we can survive abuse with grace and empathy. Now sit back and get comfortable. The Sage Advice Podcast starts right now. Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Sage Advice Podcast. My next guest and I connected a while ago. She is friends with a previous guest of the show and wanted to come on and share her story. And after many calendar changes, we finally made it happen. So welcome Aimee to the show, everybody. Thanks for being here, Aimee.
Good morning. Thank you.
Of course, of course. So first, why don't you tell me what made you decide to come on and share your story?
I think it's very important for women, or men end up in these situations as well, to know that there is support out there and that you're not alone. And there are people that understand what you're going through. And on the other side, there is help, there is support. And I just don't want women especially feeling alone and scared, because that's how I spent 3 years of my life. And
that's why I did it. So I'm happy that it resonated. I think reading something is one thing and hearing someone else tell their story and hits a little bit different.
It absolutely does. And when I was able to make my statement in court, when my abuser was sentenced, I even asked if there was any recording of it. I knew I could get paper,
right.
But I wanted people to hear me speak. I wanted them to hear my fluctuations. I wanted to hear my emphasis. I wanted them to hear the past 3 years. And you can't do that by reading. I mean, you can, but...
the passion that you're giving already, it doesn't come across the same on paper.
It really does not. And I could probably be a brilliant writer, but there aren't enough adjectives or, any type of descriptive words that really could explain the dynamic of this type of a relationship. Now that I'm on the outside is just absolutely unreal. And one thing that sticks in my head now that I'm on the outside, and it was brought to my attention actually by a friend who's a social worker. We were talking one day and she says to me, she goes, with abusive relationships, she goes, people don't talk about the love. And she's right, because there is love. There is some, level of, I really do care about this person. I do love this person. Outside of that, there is almost like another life. We had fun. We watched movies together. We did this. We'd go thrift store shopping. There were good times. It wasn't all just this, wretched, horrendous,
right.
Life.
I had a social worker say that to me as well, because she's like, if it was horrible all the time and if he was a monster all of the time, you would have no reason to stay.
Exactly.
And so that charm and that love and that bond and the fun is still there. And I totally agree with you. A lot of people don't realize that because they're hearing your story and just seeing like horror show, and they don't, you don't want to talk about the love because that's the part that also hurts.
Yes, it does. And in the beginning when I left, and even to turn around and say no to him, it hurt. I didn't, this was a man I did love. I can't say that I didn't. It was a different kind of love than the love that I had for like my first husband. And, that with my kids and, that whole type of life. It was different, but I did love this man. And there was no doubt in my mind that he didn't love me. When he would hug me, kiss my forehead, I was his baby girl. I was his monkey. I mean, we had pet names for each other. There was love. And, and that part makes it difficult as well, because you can't understand why, somebody that loves you so much could do this to you.
Right. Yeah, 100%. That was a very good way of putting it, because I felt that emotion. I think everyone who's listening has felt that before. And so it's a good way to put it like that.
One of the many things that starts to mess with your head. And, John was he's not dead, so I don't want to be he's a very charming man. He's very, very intelligent. I've never met anyone more intelligent than he.
Most abusers are very smart.
Yes. And now again, being on the outside, seeing the manipulation,
right.
And not just over me.
Everybody. Oh yeah. It's their whole world. It's their whole world.
And exactly. And even after I came out, and there were previous women, his ex-wife, there was a woman before the two of us, and we have connected with her as well. So I have become like really good friends with his ex-wife. She was actually the first person that I contacted with. I connected with after he was arrested, or around that time anyway.
Yeah. Well, why don't you start at like how you guys met, a little bit about your story. So how did we get to this place?
Okay. So, John and I met in fall of 2016. I had been separated with my husband for almost 2 years at that point. And, I had a business with my ex-husband, and we sold that. And, just long story short, I started my own little baking business, and I was doing farmers markets.
Nice.
So when I started this particular market, John was not there. There was somebody else there. He came a little bit later in the fall, and another vendor who I knew from the town where I live in was like, "Oh, have you met John? He's such a great guy. Oh, he's so interesting to talk to," and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know, we met, and I don't know, we just like started kind of flirting with each other, and it was all kind of new, fun, and fresh for me. I haven't had a man pay attention to me in like a long time. So it felt really good. And I connected with him on Facebook, and he was like, "Oh, I'm so glad you did this." And I don't know, just one thing led to another, and we kind of started dating. I don't know, we just kind of hang out and have a couple drinks and, watch movies. And we never really went out. But anyway, so as time kind of went along, I started to realize, I don't know, I kind of feel like, not that I'm a naive person. I was never like, a bad girl in high school. And I always kind of, I don't know, wasn't a troublemaker.
All rules generally.
Yes, I did. I mean, I did get in trouble and stuff like that, but I never like broke the law or anything like that. So it kind of came to, and I was never really around people that drank and stuff like that. You had your buddies in school and stuff like that, but whatever. So it kind of came to my attention that, why does this guy still drinking at 5 a.m.? Little things. And I didn't really like.
I identify with you on that one.
And I'm like, God, was he really up all night? Wow. So little things like that I didn't really, I slowly connected.
Something you don't understand that I feel like gets filed into some little like, I'm not sure where to put this. I'll circle back to you later. Right. But I've noticed that it's odd to me.
Yes. Yes. And it's just kind of not sitting right.
Right.
He had a very sad story. He was abused as a kid, and he was in a car crash, and I would never, ever take this away from anyone. And he was in a fatal car accident with his sister and her best friend. And there has been a lot of stories floating around of what really happened. Me and his ex-wife never really got like the same type of story.
I was going to say right away that I now question those major stories.
Yes. Yes. And
that's the truth.
Yeah, exactly. So, I would never take that away from someone, but he had an immense amount of guilt about it. And, he would constantly tell me how his ex-wife abused him, show me scars on his arms, and, she took their son away and all this stuff. So he totally had everything manipulated with me, changed around. I was believing his sob story, and, he has tried to kill himself, and, and all this stuff. And all these other women were just, awful to him. And,
He left him and broke his heart, never talked to him again. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And, he's, and he's a man, and, that's, John's got a lot of issues. He, he's a man, and, women are always emasculating him, and, women are inferior, and we have all the power in this country because we have, and I'm saying things out of his mouth.
Him, yeah.
Because we have a vagina. We're all feminist cunts.
Nice.
Yeah. Yes. So
sorry, was it kind of, I know there's a lot that comes at you. I totally understand. And then you get emotions into it. Like, I get it. So when did you start noticing like his aggression towards you or behavior towards you started to change?
Verbally, almost kind of right away. But he still knew how to, I'm so sorry. The things that come out of my, that are coming out of my mouth is just, poison that's been bled to me. It won't happen again. I really, want us to get to know each other, but it's stuff like that. Yeah. So I'd get the attention that obviously I was craving, and, things would be fine for a couple of weeks, and then something would happen again.
Yeah. So I recognize that pattern. I will say I was in the same pattern.
And then there were a couple of incidents where he didn't hit me, but I was like up against the wall, and he punched the wall. He'd break things, damage things of mine. And then it came to me. There was a bit of a progression.
Yes. When people say like, oh, he would never hit me, he would never touch me, I just have a really hard time believing that, because people that have anger problems who are abusive verbally, there's just always a moment and a switch that it could happen. And I just don't trust or believe when somebody insists that they would never touch me, because when he started punching walls, that was my siren bell to get the heck out of there in my situation. And so it was when I realized that it was literally a split second, I could see it in his head, in his eyes, where he switched off and was like, oh, nope, he was going to hit me.
Right.
and I was like, oh, and that I gotta get out of here. So it's a very fine line. And I wanted you to touch on, because I think at this point, a lot of people are probably saying, why didn't you just leave at that point? And, you and I were getting into a little discussions about it, but why don't you kind of give your thoughts on that perspective? Because I hate when people, give that judgment and say, why don't you just leave?
Yes. And, almost a year out of this relationship, um, people don't understand that these abusers are master manipulators. They have perfected their craft. And if they want to keep you, they can. They will. And I can't just say that they will say anything or do anything. It's the way that it's done. It's not so cut and dry. It's the way that they say things. It's the way that they do things.
It's that they've spent their time, whether they consciously knew it or not, studying you.
Yes.
And
yes.
What makes you tick and what gets an emotional response out of you instead of a logical response.
And I also feel now, again, being on the outside and knowing 2 other women that he has abused, 2 out of the 3 of us are very similar in stature, features. Mm-hmm. And I almost feel like he kind of preyed on a certain type of woman. He knew what he could do. And, he also learned quickly that I was also vulnerable. I was, my emotions were all over the place with my ex-husband and my family life and, how my life had changed. And like I said, I was just really loving any attention from a man. And
it's almost as if, it kind of sounds like what he did, but they position themselves as the one person that's on your side in a way. Like, oh, I've got your back. Oh, I'm on your side. I'm listening to you. I'm here for you. And
yes.
Yeah. Like they're the person in your world that you can depend on 100%, even though they're not, but they make you feel that.
Exactly. And it was like, don't worry, baby, we'll move and, we'll get your kids and, we'll have a great life. And, my home with my children was so broken and I was so devastated and they were as well. And I'm like, yeah, this will be great. My kids will be back in a stable home. But there was always that little bit of, well, you kind of know what he's like, but there was always, with the same type of talk, there was always, no, I'll be fine. I'm not going to touch you. I'd never touch kids. I'll get better. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we've been to, therapists. I want us to have a good life together. I don't want to be sick. I'll take whatever meds.
Stop drinking. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't forget about the drinking, but it's kind of like par for the course. And John was also addicted to Adderall. His psychiatrist.
Man, we're talking the same story. That Adderall combination is rough.
He would take a month's worth in, I don't know, 4-7 days. 10 at best. 10 would be pushing it. There would, drinking, staying up all night for days.
Yep.
Well, I went to work.
Yep.
Well, I went to work and supported 2 households. Yes. Um, but yeah, I don't, yes, there was a lot of negative, but like, I was saying there was a lot of positive and a lot of promises um, and obviously by the time John got to me, um, his, like I said, his manipulation skills, were perfected, and, he knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah. So what precipitated you actually leaving? And I know you mentioned court, and you can talk as much about that as you want or as little, but
Oh, sure.
what kind of got you to that point? What was your turning point?
Well, so it was probably October. I knew, I had known for a while that I needed to get out of this relationship. I didn't know how.
Yeah.
I was so scared. And my plan was to leave when he got a job. He would be at work one day. I just take all my shit and go.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse my language. The motherfucker never got a job.
Somehow I'm not surprised.
Well, yeah. I didn't think you would be. I'll get my Adderall prescription Monday. I'll hit the ground running, looking for jobs. Yeah, okay. I know what that means. I can't tell you the amount of anxiety I would get when I knew that he was getting a refill on his prescription. But anyway, that's another story.
Why didn't he have a job? Was there a reason? Like a legitimate reason?
No.
Okay.
No. And I don't, you know what, Aaron? I don't know if a half hour is going to be enough.
Well, we can go as long as you need.
So it was probably about October of 20. And now my home with my children was being foreclosed, pre-foreclosure. I had gotten it out of pre-foreclosure, actually with my ex-husband. Really, I'm not giving him that much credit. With the job that I had gotten, and I knew that I was going to have to start paying the mortgage here, or at least help. And right. I couldn't pay John's rent, which he always considered was our house, and help pay for the mortgage here, plus pay all the expenses here. I was paying all the expenses here. I was paying the mortgage at John's place and all his utilities.
Man.
He made me, until he got SNAP benefits, he made me use my SNAP benefits for my kids to buy food for him. But, not that it's right or wrong, but when he did get his benefits, he did give me his card a couple times to get, food for my kids. But there was always recourse for that.
Right. There's never a genuine act of kindness. There's always an ulterior motive that's going to get thrown in your face.
Yes, exactly. It always comes back to haunt you.
Yeah.
Always comes back to haunt you. So it was probably about October of 20. And my anxiety was sky high. I knew that I had to, for my kids to survive, I knew I needed to get out of here. And I just didn't know how. I was scared. I don't have enough fingers and toes to tell you how many times he threatened to kill me, especially if I tried to leave. So I just didn't know what I was going to do. I was losing weight by the minute. I'm not a big person. I'm 5'2", soaking wet right now. I weigh 105 pounds. I lost so much weight. I was feeling like anxious and sick to my stomach all the time. I was really burning the candle at both ends, just trying to figure out what to do. I was literally making myself sick. So I don't know, January comes. Somehow or another, my ex-husband and I made the first payment in December on the house. I don't know how I did it. It was also, the height of COVID. My district manager, I can't thank him enough. He knew my situation of what was going on with my house and stuff like that. And when a lot of schools were closed, there was others open. There were people out sick. He kept me working. That man was like a savior that year. Anyway, so January comes. It's a new year. Still I'm trying to figure everything out. John new promises. Friday night, I come back from work. I was working at a school with a food service company. I was also working at a Stewart's. It's a gas station convenience shop. Plus, I was doing farmers markets with my little baking business. I was working a lot. So I come home from work one night. Worked 2 jobs. He's been home, drinking, watching whatever on the fucking couch. And all I wanted to do was like put pajamas on and sit. And he says to me, "Did you look up how to do blah, 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 blah?" I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "No." And it just blew up, and I'm like, "You're here all day. You tell me that I can't look up shit and that I'm horrible at it." And well, it was like something, how to cook something or something. I don't even remember what the hell it was. And well, that's your thing. And I'm like, "You gotta be kidding me. You gotta be kidding me. You're telling me that you're such the cook and all this and that. And meanwhile, you're here all fucking day and you're going to bitch at me that I didn't look up something on YouTube for you?"
It's always the simplest thing that blows up the fight for some ridiculous reason, but it's them.
And Erin, I am not one to fight back. I am not one to, really start an argument. But I was just kind of like, what the fuck? I really didn't think it was going to escalate into, but, who am I to kid myself? It always did. But I guess
you're a logical person.
Yeah. And it's funny too. I guess, I guess I thought it was just going to turn into, a typical beating night, So now we're arguing. It's getting physical. He's pushing me around, smacking me on the side of the head, kicking me if I've, have fallen to the floor. That was one thing you tried not to do. But, John was 6 foot, over 200 pounds, and I already described to you my size.
The dramatic difference.
It is. He was really basically twice my size. Yeah. So when we would fight like this, there would always be like pauses. It was almost like we had to like catch our breaths. And it's kind of like weird to even like think that, but it did happen. We were sitting on the bed next to each other. I was on his right. And we were sitting there and I just remember breathing really, really heavy. I was shaking and I was just really hoping that it was going to come to an end, but I knew that it wasn't going to. And he just took his hand and backhanded my face. He came across and hit my right eye. I've never felt pain like this before. I just went down, grabbed my face, and I was like, my eye. And right there, for him, it was like a light switch. "Oh, baby, you okay? What happened?"
What happened? What happened?
Yeah. What happened? I couldn't open my eye. It was bleeding, but I had no visible outside cut.
Ouch.
And he was like, "Oh, it's probably just a blood vessel." Okay, so for this man who has, touted for 3 years that he's so educated and all this stuff. Okay, well, a popped blood vessel is under your skin. It's not going to bleed out. And, I was like, no, it ended up stopping eventually, but my eye was swollen shut. It was black and blue. I felt like I needed a stake on it, like from the Flintstones. It was and I was in excruciating pain. I cannot, and I have a very, very high tolerance for pain. Yeah, I had 3 unmedicated births. I'm not bragging, but just to, I have a high tolerance for pain. I always have. I was in pain. I was in pain. I was supposed to work the next day, like a 13-hour day. I texted my, the chef that I was supposed to be working for. And I'm like, my kid and I were playing. I got kicked in the eye. I always, you
protect
become an
them.
expert.
Mm-hmm.
You become an expert on lies of making up excuses of what happened to you while you were wearing a long sleeve shirt in August.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I hear in South America it keeps you cooler. They do that.
It's not funny, but we laugh because it's just so ridiculous to think about it in the past. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I'm not laughing because it's humorous. It's absurd. And so so that the next day was Saturday. So it's been a year. So this happened Friday, January 22nd. So the next day, I don't know how, but I took a good amount of my stuff out of his place. He just sat in his chair that I bought him. I don't know why I always have to throw that shit in, but because it bothers me, because like everything that he had, I ended up buying, and money was always an issue. But anyway, I don't know how, but I took like a good amount of my clothes. I took stuff I said I needed for the market the next day. He just sat there in that chair and drank and didn't say a word to me. I came home. I went to the market the next day, which is 6 miles from where he lived, or we lived. I was supposed to say, and everybody was like, "What happened?" I'm like, messing around with my kid. He kicked me in the eye, and everybody's like, "Aim, that really doesn't look good." I'm like, "Nah, I'm sweeping it under the rug like every other, black eye, finger marks, bruises, cuts."
It's an embarrassing to you on some level to say what really happened.
Oh, absolutely. And I was scared to death to tell anybody what happened. So one of the vendors at the market was like, "You really should get that looked at." And I'm like, "Nah, it'll be all right."
Mm-hmm.
At some point during the market, I think I actually tried to open my eye, and I realized I couldn't see. And it scared me.
Yeah.
For once I was scared, and I had my story. So I'll go to urgent care. So after the market, I went to urgent care. I honestly do not remember what contact I had with John that Sunday. I'm sure I did speak to him at some point. I just don't, I honestly don't remember. I probably have it blocked out right now. So the first urgent care I went to, they were like, "No, I'm sorry, we can't help you. You need to go to an emergency room." So I went to the emergency room here by my house. They're like, "No, we're sorry, we can't help you either." But nobody told me. I don't know if they didn't know what was wrong or they didn't tell me. So over here, Putnam Hospital, they send me to Danbury, Connecticut. They have an ophthalmologist on staff 24/7. Meet him at his office. He will open it and examine your eye. This man had me in his office for 45 minutes and examined my eye. He left me there, came back 10 minutes later, handed me a slip of paper, and I felt like I was in a Monopoly game. It was like, "Do not pass go, do not do anything else. Go to Yale, New Haven. You need to have surgery now."
Wow.
I drove myself to New Haven, Connecticut. It was approximately, I don't know. It was dark out. It wasn't easy to see with one eye.
With one eye, yeah.
I couldn't figure out where to park. I mean, my adrenaline now is just absolutely insane. It's an
Yeah,
hour.
nobody said anything. Like, it sounds like nobody gave you any answers at all.
No. So finally, I, got myself parked. I admit myself into the emergency room, and finally, I get examined. Tell them my story, and it's funny because out of all the people that tended to me, there was only one doctor who really didn't tend to me that much, who looked at me like she didn't believe my story. She kept looking at me. And I knew she knew.
Yeah.
It was the only connection like that I had with anyone there. Anyone. And like I said, she didn't tend to me that much, but the little bit that she did, we made a lot of eye contact, and I could feel that she knew that I was lying. So they end up taking pictures of my eye. They tell me I have a 7 to 10 millimeter cut at the top of my my globe, my eyeball. It's bleeding behind my eye.
Wow. Oh God.
So behind my eye was filled up with liquid blood, clotted blood, and I have this gash that's still bleeding. Why didn't you come here sooner? I really didn't have an answer. If you came to us any later, you could have lost your eye.
Wow.
3 a.m., 4 a.m. on the 25th, I am having emergency surgery on my eye at Yale New Haven with this ophthalmology team. I was in the hospital for 4 days. I came home to recover. At this point, John is like up my ass. I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was this bad. I love you. What can I do to make things right? The whole gamut. And then there were some days where he's like, fuck you. This was your, of course, it was always
Your
my fault.
fault. Mm-hmm.
I don't want anything to do with you. And, and I still kind of found myself when he was like that, like, no, I still want to be with you. What are you doing? But I don't know. I felt like I was kind of like going through the motions at that point, because it's like what we did. And the longer that I was here in my house with my kids, because what my ex and I would do was we split time between the kids. And when it was my time to be with kids, I would be here in the house with them, and he would go stay at his mom's, or, if he had a girl, whatever. And, then we would flip. But as my relationship with John progressed, John became more demanding of me being with him more. So it made me being here and really just emotionally available for my kids at times, because I wasn't allowed to have free contact with them. He felt that if I wasn't there, that they should be relying solely on my ex-husband, that they don't need their mother.
Jeez.
And if I showed him anything other than that, I would, there were always, recourses for that. But so anyway, so I came home to recover. So so the longer that I was here, I realized that what I knew, I didn't need to, not that I don't know if I really realized right away that I didn't need to be with him, but I didn't want to go back. I could breathe. Even though we were still arguing over phone conversations, emails, texts, or whatever, I almost felt like I had the control for once.
That
And
shift is big.
yes. And it wasn't very apparent right away, but I just felt like my breathing got a little easier. And I was in, and I felt like really in a short amount of time, I was like, really enjoying my kids again and available to them. And I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to go back. I knew I didn't want to go back. I had known for a year that I didn't want to go back. And it sucks to say that I couldn't figure out how to fuck to leave, but it got decided for me. And rather, at this point, I'm still having issues coming to terms with probably never see again out of my right eye. But, he did threaten to kill me that night. He leaned over me and said, this would be a perfect murder-suicide. Yes, he said it again. He has previously said it, but I don't know if it would have been that night. I don't know. I don't know. So in a lot of ways, I'm thankful that it was just my eye. But it's still really hard to swallow.
Yeah. It's a heavy thing. It takes a long time to work through that. It's not something that happens to everyone, and it's not something that should happen to anyone.
No. And, I've spent 3 years, like I said, with bruises and bruised kidneys. I mean, I urinated blood for almost 7 days once, because he had punched me in the back and kicked me so hard. He broke both of my thumbs at some point. I can't, I taught my boys how to play baseball, catch. It was always something that my family and I played and were interested in. Not that my ex-husband isn't a sports guy, but it was something that I did with my boys. I can't put on a mitt now and close it to catch a ball. And I'm that type of mom. I'll go out and play with my kids. I can't catch a ball anymore because both my thumbs are have been broken, and I never, got them. I mean, I know you don't do much for fingers, but I never splinted it. I never reset them.
I would admit that there was something really wrong.
Exactly. You sweep this shit under the rug. He slammed my head so hard once, up against an elliptical that he had gotten. The blood on the rug in the bedroom. He made me scrub it. He made me clean it. And then bitch that I didn't clean it well enough and that he had to do it. That cut, I probably could have used stitches. That bled for days. I remember just sinking down into the bathtub. I took a lot of baths with him. It's funny that you start to think about things that you did, and you wonder if it was some type of like a coping mechanism that you would do. I took a lot of baths when I lived with John, and I just remember that it wasn't even that night, because like I said, it bled for quite a few days, and like 2 days later, I just remember sinking down into the bathtub, and it was still bleeding. The whole bathtub just it filled up. The water turned pink, and I could, I'm just like rubbing the scab on the back of my head. It's dissolving, and it's, and it's still bleeding. You know,
I think
you just,
what my guess is what you got from the bath is the ability to shut the door and probably hopefully be undisturbed in a somewhat calm environment.
yes. Yeah. Yes. It wasn't always, a lot of times it did get cut short.
Yes. I don't doubt that. So when did you decide to get the police involved and really end it?
I was talking to his mentor / best friend, an older gentleman who I had become very friendly with. You know, we went to go visit him a few times and stuff like that. And I called him and I told him and what happened. And he was like, Aimee, get an order of protection. And right as he said this to me, and this is somebody that has known John for 20 years or more, it was like the hair on the back of my neck stood up. Like, this was like, I needed to listen. So I called the sheriff's department in Dutchess County and I'm like, how would I go about getting an order of protection? And so, of course, they ask you why. And so I told them why. And they're like, no, ma'am, we're sorry, but he has to be arrested. And it won't be you. It'll be New York State. If you're telling me that, you know, your injury is as bad as it is, then New York State will arrest him. I'm like, no, that's not what I want. You know, I did all of that. And he was like, you don't have a choice. Where did this take place? So I told them. So then I got switched over to the Orange County Sheriff's Department. The officer who answered the phone, Deputy Forbes, I still, it is in my filing cabinet in my brain. I need to let the sheriff know of this deputy's exemplary. He was amazing. From the minute he answered the phone until John was sentenced. He really went above and beyond duty. Anyway, so I talked to him. He explained the whole thing to me, how, you know, the law with New York State, they have to, you know, arrest him and all this stuff. And I am like, I'm freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, I can't have him arrested. He'll definitely kill me. I'm still thinking that I'm like going back, you know, just because it was just so ingrained in what I was doing. But I knew that I wasn't going back. Anyway, Dutchess County Sheriff's come, they take my report. John had already threatened to call CPS on me over emails. The sheriff was like, please, you know, I'm everything is just freaking me out. Because I know that I'm going to have this man arrested now. Tuesday, February 16th, they go and they arrest him. He was released.
For what?
So just to backtrack a little bit, shortly after I met John, he got a DUI. He had his license taken away for 3 years. He was on probation for 3 years. So I was his only means of transportation. So there was a whole court thing going on with him. So being that he was on probation, there was a whole court program and all this stuff. They let him go because he was like, you know, a model guy. Go to his court things on time, always show up. And that was because of me. So they let him go. So 2 days later, they were able to arrest him on violating probation. The Tuesday, the 16th, the arrest was for the assault. And they let him go. The whole probation thing, I don't know why. Some of it is a little bit of a blur. Just really trying to navigate the legal system has been
difficult and eye-opening.
Oh my word. Anyway, they arrested him 2 days later, but in the meantime, him and I had extensive conversation. And it's kind of funny because I had screenshotted all of our texts and stuff together. And I actually just came across them yesterday, and I was just kind of glimpsing through them. Just him in desperation, just, please, I'll do anything. And I just remember we were on the phone and I'm standing outside. This I do remember very, very clearly because this was almost my defining moment. And I'll do he is literally, I can hear him groveling. He's on his knees. I'll do anything. I'm not walking away from this relationship, he says. I said, but John, I am. I'm walking away. And I hung up. That was amazing.
That was very strong of you.
I don't know where it came from, but it was amazing. And honestly, I can't say that I don't know where it came from. It was my kids. I knew they would disown me as their mother if I went back to him. I knew
it's powerful. And I think it's a good motivator. I'm happy that you listened.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
One thing I did want to say about court, because I had this thought as well about I don't want to get him arrested. It's my fault. Like, that's not what I want to do. And the police officer I was working with said, this is a result of his actions. This has nothing to do with you. This is everything that he did. You just said what happened to you. And so don't ever put it on you that he's getting arrested. And I think that's important for people to remember who might be thinking, should I tell? Should I not tell? It's my fault. He's going to jail. I don't want him to go to jail. He put himself in jail.
Yes, exactly. And he should have been in jail many other times. But yes, absolutely. It was out of my hands. I just wanted an order of protection. And they, I have to say that all the officers that I dealt with were very, very sensitive to me. And don't worry, they kept trying to ease my anxiety. They could see it. Obviously, they have dealt with this because they were that good. Don't worry. They just kept telling me, don't worry. And what's still so amazing to me, because I spent so much time lying and making up stories, and I felt like my whole life was like a lie. No one skipped a beat. Everyone believed me. Yeah. There was no question from anyone about what happened. And not just my eye, the whole, our whole relationship, all the abuse. There was no question. And like I said, I think it's because I lied so much. And even though I was good at it and people did believe me, I just didn't expect people to believe me. And I'm still shocked. Why didn't anybody question me? Just because of this injury? I don't, I don't know. It is a little bit of a weird dynamic, but I'm glad they did.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Me too.
yeah,
And everyone believed me. And I actually had a lot of people who almost scared me straight, when I told my story, and then the victim's advocate got, the report that I gave the police initially. She called me and scared the crap out of me. And she was like, "Are you okay? Are you okay right now? How are you mentally? Because this is very, very scary stuff." And hearing that from somebody who works in law enforcement and hears people's stories all day, for them to tell me that it was very, very scary, then I got scared.
yes,
and I was like, "Oh my God, what?" It's because you minimize it to survive.
Exactly. And it's funny that you say that you minimize it to survive, because it's, and I don't know why this popped into my head, but this is minimizing it. We would sit and watch things, and, domestic violence would come up and abuse would come up, and we would both be sitting there, and we both know that was like part of our relationship, but it was never like discussed outside of when there was like an altercation.
Yeah.
That wasn't, like it almost wasn't us. That wasn't going on. That wasn't us. So yes, you do minimize to survive.
Yeah. It's just something their brain does. It's like, it's danger. There's confusion. There's chaos. And especially when things start to get scary, it's,
Yes.
It wasn't really for me until my friends convinced me to go talk to a detective. And then when I had to tell the story of our relationship from start to finish was when I realized how bad it was, and when I realized how embarrassed I was and how insane it all sounded coming out of my own mouth.
Yes. And there is a lot of embarrassment, but it goes along with, sometimes feeling judged by people. Why didn't you just leave? How did I let myself stay in a situation like that? I thought I was a stronger person. There's a lot that goes on with that.
Yeah.
And yes, you're told, it's not your fault. And I know that it's not my fault. But as a human, you are gonna put some of the blame on yourself to some level.
I was mad at myself for putting myself through it.
Yes.
And what do you do with that? It's a hard thing to get through when you're trying to heal. It's one of the hurdles for sure.
Yes. And, this healing for me is still very fresh and very new. My my poor kids, they're a little bit older, so I've been very honest with them since all of this, especially since I've had to lie so much. And I know that I had to earn their trust back, but it didn't take long. They really saw the change in me. They're happy to have their mom, but there are issues that come with being in a relationship like this. The PTSD. I've always had anxiety, but now it's like, through the roof. I have panic attacks. I'm depressed. There are days that my kids come home from school and I've been in bed all day. Mom, what's for dinner? I don't know. Cereal. Find something. The roller coaster of emotions that I was on. I mean, I still am, but I have to say that I was diagnosed recently. I was put on some new medication, and it's really helped. And they've noticed, and I feel better. I'm not a huge one for medication. I've always tried to live more of a natural lifestyle. But I'm not just taking it for myself so I feel better. My kids needed me too. They needed their mom to level out. They needed me not to snap. They needed me not to they needed me to be more level. Because the anxiety is real. The panic attacks are real. The triggers are real. And those triggers, you never, ever, ever know what it's going to be.
I think
you really, really don't.
It gets, the only thing that helps is time, and kind of forgetting and working through those triggers is painful and comes out of nowhere, and it takes a long time.
Yes. And, last spring, my son had a baseball tournament in Newburgh. John's last job was in Newburgh. We spent a lot of time in Newburgh. His pharmacy was in Newburgh, where I had to get his Adderall, his antidepressants too, but who took those? So I hadn't been there for a while. And it was, I don't know, it was like April, I think it was. And I didn't really realize where in Newburgh it was. And I started to drive through there, and this was like the first real big trigger that I had. And it just really came out of nowhere. And I started sweating. My heart was racing. I couldn't breathe. My chest was heavy. And I started crying. And I was like, oh my God, I can't, it's where I am. I dropped my son off and I had to leave. I came back and I sat by myself in the bleachers, sunglasses on, and I cried through 2 baseball games.
Well, I'll commend you for showing up for your son and working through that. I think that's a testament to the strength you have in being a mom.
Well, thank you. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, that's a lot. You could have just bailed.
At that point, feeling like I was still failing them.
I get it for sure.
So that was the first real big trigger.
Before we wrap up today, what are some words of wisdom, some advice you would give somebody who's kind of in the thick of an abusive relationship right now?
God, it's so scary to leave, but you can. And the support, if I could just say for 1 minute, the support is unmatched to anything you will ever get. It's amazing. You'll be okay. I promise you will be okay. Absolutely.
Thank you. And I've said before, I'm so happy that you had a great experience with the police. I had a good experience with one department, a poor experience with a different department. And so, on that note, I wanted to say that we're here to help. There's so many people that are there to help. Be your own advocate, find an advocate. And you can do it. It's scary, but it's the best thing you're ever going to do.
No. And there are hotlines and shelters and, all things that I really didn't know that were available to me. The resources are absolutely incredible. And, and you also find out, as you come out too, that there are more people that have been involved in situations like this than you thought, and probably more people that you know.
Yes. Yeah, I learned that when I spoke out. I got a lot of people in my life who said I was there too. And I would have never known that.
No. And I there were so many people, people that I've known for a really long time and just shocked, be like, you too? There were so many of those, you too?
Yeah.
So, but I would love to chat again.
Absolutely.
There's so many dynamics to my story with John, with his ex-wife, the previous woman. I really would love to sit down and talk again. It's I have a lot to share.
Yes. Well, we'd love to have you back. And thank you so much for Thank you for being vulnerable and for sharing your story. And it was really impactful. So hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody. Bye. Have a great week. Well, that's our show. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions or if you're willing to share your story, please email us at sageadvicepodcast@gmail.com. Until next week, remember, when you're kind to yourself, the healing can begin. See you next time.
This show was brought to you by inflowradio.com, the best curated talk radio network for personal development, wellness, spirituality, and conscious business.
If you or someone you love is in immediate danger, please call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 1-800-799-7233. For more information, please see the resources tab at sage.community.